Welcome to Old Town Mariposa. My name is Bob Borchard, and we have a great show for you today. Coming from you from Old Town Mariposa and beautiful historic Mariposa Hotel. And this show today is being brought to you by Bet's Gold Coin, a family-friendly sports tavern right down the street. And my guest today, the infamous, the famous, the notorious Leroy Radanovich, author, bon vivant. Anyway, Leroy, welcome to the Old Town Show.
Bob, thank you very much for having me, and I appreciate the invitation. We do have a new book that's just being released, and I'm going to talk about, first I want to tell you about the goal of this series of books. About 15 years ago, Arcadia Publishing came to me and wanted me to begin developing books of Mariposa County history, Yosemite, Mariposa, so on and so forth, that were based on the historic photographs that exist, and mostly from my own collection, because I've been doing this now for 40 or 50 years. And so we did publish 4 different books, which have been available here in Mariposa and Yosemite, and through Barnes & Noble and Amazon, what have you. One on Mariposa County, one on Yosemite Valley, one on Yosemite National Park and the vicinity, one on the Yosemite Valley Railroad. Then Arcadia came to me and said, we would like a book that talks about the people that help make your county the great place it is. And I said, well, I haven't got enough space to do all of that. Well, he said, pick a bunch. And I did pick a bunch of people, mostly that I had photographed or had photographs of over the years, so that I could tell the story of these people that were so important to the growth and development of Mariposa County. You know, Bob, you talk about community building, and the facts are that that's what these people did. Now, whether it was a community of Indians, or it was a community of gold miners, or it was a community of merchants, or ranchers, or whatever it was, there were outstanding individuals in each of these fields, and some other surprises that you'll see in the new book. The new book is called Legendary Locals of Yosemite National Park and Mariposa County. And it's going to be released. It is, in fact, it's been released, and it's available today at the Mariposa Museum and History Center and the Country Store in downtown Mariposa. And on the 25th of this month, April, I'll be at the museum during there's a band concert, a band event that's going to occur up there. And I'll be there during this period to do book signings of this particular book. And then during Butterfly Days, I'll be downtown at the company store with my friend Scott Nady, and we're going to also sign books and discuss these things.
Well, I got to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I know you're a musician, too, amongst all your other talents.
At one time.
Are you going to play with the band?
No, this is a high school band.
Well.
Oh, no. I did play in that high school band 60-some years ago. Well, but it was at a time when the reeds for saxophones were made out of bamboo.
You know, I'd like to back up just a minute.
All right.
Okay. You know, one of the things, I've known you for many, many years. I've known you since almost the day I came into Mariposa County. And we've had many, many conversations. We've shared a front porch from time.
Yes, we do that.
But there's a lot of people out there who are watching the show that don't know much about you. So maybe you could give me a little bit of background. Were you born in Mariposa?
No. In 1943, when I was almost 10 years old, my father bought the drugstore in Mariposa. And that's roughly 72 years ago. And we came here, and I went through school in Mariposa from the 5th grade on. And the wonderful thing about coming here at that time was that there were so many members, individuals of the historic families that were still here family names like McElligott and Trabuco and Schlageter and on and on and on. And a lot of those folks are represented in my new book. And as just a 10-year-old kid, my father put me to work in the drugstore, because that's the way it was in those days. And so,
slave labor.
well, whatever was available. And you got to meet and know all the people who came through the front door, and pretty soon they were calling me the soda jerk, because I ran the soda fountain at the store, even as a 10-year-old. And there are a number of people living here today that worked with me at that soda fountain, and we're all in our 70s and 80s.
You kind of launched your photography career out of that.
Well, not exactly, but kind of, because the drugstore, of course, had a photography department. My father was a fine photographer and had done photography in Exeter, California before he came to Mariposa. And soon we built a darkroom, and I was not really allowed to be in the darkroom very often because I'd make a mess. But he taught me how to do various things with film and cameras, and he provided me with an ancient old camera to work with. And so we did some photography, and my dad photographed in Yosemite to some degree, and some around Mariposa, historic buildings.
Do you remember the day we met?
Well, in my darkroom is where we met.
I thought that was kind of ironic.
And I was expecting a young lady, and he shows up. No.
He thought it was Roberta Borchard, right?
Roberta Borchard.
At any rate.
Well, actually, my studio and darkroom was in the what we called the Bagby building, which was the old Presbyterian church on Bullion Street. It had been remodeled into a couple of apartments, and the basement of this building, I mean, this has got a huge history because it was part of the first high school in Mariposa. And the downstairs of that building, I kind of cut it in half and turned half of it into a dark room and put all my machinery in there. And we were doing color work and doing practically everything.
Did you ever hear of a guy named Ansel Adams?
Ansel Adams. Well, his son and I went to school together, and so I got to go up there and have breakfast once in a while. And Ansel was a great friend of my father's. You know, he came to Mariposa because of my dad, I think, and photographed various aspects of the community. One of his greatest photographs I have in this book, which is the Mariposa County Courthouse history, that my partner Scott Pinkerton and I did. Scott passed away a few years ago, and I continued on working with these projects. But Ansel photographed the front of the courthouse and also the church in Hornitas and St. Joseph's in Mariposa, and he did a beautiful portrait of Father Francis Walsh. And that's in the book which I helped put together on the history of St. Joseph's Church. Ansel...
You've been working on history of this community for how many years now?
Well, you know something? You're a kid, you're a 10-year-old, and you come from the San Joaquin Valley where there's smudge pots and orange trees and all that sort of thing.
Grapes.
And yeah, some grapes. There was Thompson seedless in those days, an emperor. And you come up here, and the first day in town, I'm astonished because the town smells old. The town smells old.
I know that feeling.
Okay, and here's a situation where there's probably no air conditioning in any of the stores.
Yeah.
This is in the middle of March, and it's warm, but it's not bad. And one of the first places that I was taken into was Trabuco's shopping center. There used to be the Trabuco's cheap cash store.
Cheap cash store.
Yeah.
I've seen the sign.
It's right downtown here. That building is still there. And my mother took me in there because it was pretty obvious that I was going to need a tough pair of Levi's and some boots. And
You were a city boy.
well, kind of. I had tennis shoes and what have you, but I needed boots because this country was just rough. rocks everywhere, and
It's a lot smoother now.
well, it was only smoothed out by a great planning director that we had that made it all smoother. Anyway,
Oh,
I was told by my father that he said, you know, there's gold mines around here and they could be dangerous. So you just keep your eyes open and your head on your shoulders and so on and so forth. And they gave me a carbide lamp on a hat and said, well, if you're going to go into these things, you got to wear this.
I'm getting the sign to wrap it up from our technician over there, Mr. Hebern. Have you met Walt?
Yeah.
Isn't he a talented guy? At any rate, what I'd like to do is, you've got a couple of book signings coming up. Your books are available in various places in Mariposa.
Right now they're available at the
And-
Mariposa Museum and History Center and at the country store downtown.
Okay. And you have a book signing coming up, and the date is
April the 25th at the History Center, and probably May the 2nd, I believe, right after the Butterfly Day Parade.
okay. And you're going to be around here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, somebody asked me to ask you a question, and I know this is going to run us a little over time. Walt wanted to know, how come you never became a clamper?
Well, simply because my liver is already damaged.
Oh, but this is a historical society in Mariposa of a pretty substantial order.
Well,
That's all right, Leroy. I'm just kidding with you.
I don't want to offend anyone, but I've tried to help them with the history that they have on some of these plaques, and I don't know where they get it, but it isn't the right history.
Well, there's also a great debate among some people who are doing history, and since most of us weren't there, all we have is written and verbal stories about what happened. So history is kind of interesting thing that way. But one of these days we'll have a discussion about history, Spinoza. History is written by the victors and that sort of thing. But today,
Well, do understand one thing,
yes, sir.
that I have a lot of respect for the clampers simply because they try to keep the history alive. And whether they get it exactly right or not, or the dates right or not, or whatever it is.
Well, in a real world, though, and this is my opinion, the fact that we talk about it keeps it alive, and the fact that there
absolutely.
are debates and discussions, and I've been reading a lot of history put together by a lot of people, some of them pretty notable in Western history, and there's a great deal of discussion and debate goes on amongst these guys. It's all good-natured, and it's all exploratory, and it's and the key concept that I think that I want to maybe make sure the audience understands why. You know, we've been talking a lot about history on this show, and something that you said to me one time has been kind of the guiding focus for how I approach this whole issue. We can't really tell where we're going unless we understand where we've been.
That's true.
But and that's why I think you play such an important role in our community, helping us understand where we've been. But I do have to sign off now. I have to tell you, I really appreciate you coming down here.
It's my pleasure.
And we're going to be seeing a lot more of it at your book signing. And I'll be up on the porch one of these
And the
days.
check's in the mail?
Check is in the mail.
All right.
Don't cash it. And for you folks out there, thank you very much for joining us today. And hope to see you soon downtown Old Town Mariposa.